So how will us moving to 5A affect your competition and your group altogether next year?
So in terms of music groups, so for band and choir, the 5A high schools, they have a much larger population, and so their performance groups are larger than the ones that the 4A schools normally field. It puts us a little bit of a competitive disadvantage because, well, one, just those groups are larger, and the larger a group is at that level, the more advanced music that they can do. The other thing is the 5A level is actually a lot more competitive on music because they only take the top 12 choirs and bands for both the 4A and 5A levels, but there are a lot more 5A schools than there are 4A schools. So on an annual basis, there are a lot more 5A schools that get left out of the state competition than at the 4A level, so that's just another area that'll make it a little bit more difficult.
What sport do you coach?
I am the new track and field head coach for Cascade High School.
How do you think that moving to 5A will affect student athletes academically? How do you think it will affect your sport? And how do you think we'll compete next year in track?
Academically, I don't see a big difference, from month to the year. They're two separate things. Really, when you look at who we're going to be competing against possibly, I think we'll be closer, so maybe less time out of class. I'm not really sure about that. How do you think it will affect track? That's hard to say. Track is an individual sport. I think we can, and I know we can compete with 5A. We need more volume of kids out to be able to really compete at a district level with bigger 5A schools, I think is the hardest part. So I think we have the kids here, we just got to get them out. And there was one more, and I forgot.
As a parent, because you have an athlete, how do you think, or how do you feel about the school moving to a 5A league?
So as a parent, it's a little daunting, thinking about team sports and how we're going to be able to compete. I think we'll do fine against some 6A schools. I think we'll do fine against McKay and North Salem. My daughter's done basketball traditionally and track and field, but then you look maybe some of the bigger schools, the Albany schools. When I was coaching at McNary at 6A, they kicked our butt a couple times. And so, it's going to be a mixed bag, I think, for us one way or the other. So I'm not sure. It'll be interesting to see what they put us with, and I just want my kid to have, I don't care if she gets a lot of wins, but I sure do care if she enjoys it and doesn't totally get smushed every time in her sport. So yeah.
I am presently coaching girls varsity basketball, but I've coached football for many, many years also.
How will this affect the sport you coach?
Well, we're going up to play bigger schools, so we will not be as successful. And so, yeah, it'll have a huge effect on us, and it'll be much, much more difficult.
Aside from sports, how do you feel that moving to 5A will affect our school?
I don't know if it really will have that much an effect besides on the sports programs. Now, if the sports programs aren't doing well, does that affect our school climate? Probably a good question for discussion. I would think yes. you start to fall out, and volleyball's going 6-18, and football's going 2-7, and cross country's getting kicked, and soccer's not doing well. I mean, that's a lot of athletes you just talked about right there. And then how are they being talked to? How are kids coming to the games now? Yeah, I'm thinking probably not. So will it affect, just going to 5A, will it affect our school? Probably not, but it will affect our athletic programs, which I think do affect the climate of the school.
Do you think moving to 5A will affect student athletes academically?
No, in fact, I mean, we would be going into the hardest 5A league in the state. Nobody would argue that. The 5A league we'd be going into is the most difficult league. But travel would be reduced. We would not be traveling as much. So affecting us academically probably would not have an adverse effect on that.
How do you feel about Cascade moving to a 5A league?
I think it could hurt as far as how many students come out for sports. They may feel overwhelmed. They feel like they may struggle, and most students don't want to fail, so it may keep students from coming out. Right or wrong, sports can improve or hurt morale at the school if the sports are struggling. I think it will find its way into the classes and amongst the students. So, if we struggle in sports, it's not going to help the school overall.
What sport do you guys play?
We're both cheerleaders.
How do you think that us moving to 5A will affect your sport?
So as of right now, we are struggling when we do competitions because other schools have more money so they can pay for other kinds of coaches like stunting coaches and tumbling coaches, and since our school is small, we cannot afford that already, and so if we are to go to a 5A, it would be much harder to compete with already bigger teams and more skilled.
How do you feel moving to a 5A will affect our school?
Well, several ways actually. One is the schools all of them are 2 to 3 or more times bigger than we are. So just the volume of school size and the student size is much greater. We're a rural school, and all the schools that in the 5A league we've been placed in are city schools. Totally different culture. And then also, we've been pretty competitive and in all sports, and we have a huge participation, and I'm concerned that our participation rate will go down. I really think our kids will compete the best they can, because that's just who we are, but I do think it will, in a negative way, affect our participation rate.
You testified at the OSAA Classification Districting Committee. Can you explain to us what you all said and how they responded?
Sure. Honestly, the first year, because I never saw that we were going to go 5A, there's a lot of talk from the 6A classification. They wanted to make 5 classifications. And so the first year of meetings, I and 3 or 4 other ADs, our goal was to keep 6 classifications and basically keep 4A as is, because we're a really high functioning group. We all get along, we take care of each other. If we have mismatches in like football, we'll, instead of being locked in for 2 years, we'll take care of each other. So if we are really strong and we had a weak opponent the first year, we'll make sure that that weak opponent gets another weak opponent, we get a strong opponent, so it's not a huge score, lopsided mess for everyone. So that was the focus the first year. Once we got that solidified at the AD conference in April, then we kept reminding them, please leave 4A alone. And at that time we had 7 leagues, again, very high functioning group. And then when we got back from break from summer, they had made a decision to put us up into 5A. So then our whole, my whole testimony changed, and trying to prove we really don't look like a 5A school. A couple of the ADs in the league we're going to go into, they actually testified for us. And then later when we went to our appeal, one of them wrote a letter for us to support us, saying we really don't belong with them.
Did you feel a lot of pressure representing our school and fighting for it?
I really love our school, and I wouldn't say pressure, because I felt I was doing the right thing, and when you're fighting for the right thing, it comes a lot easier, I think, than if you're just kind of going through the motions. So for me, it was not difficult. I felt like it was the right thing to do, and we needed this, and I still believe that.
Okay, obviously you know basically everything about us switching to 5A, so can you explain to us like what we testified and how they responded to at the...
At the testimony, we testified that Cascade had a bubble in the number of students that we had last year, right? We had a large senior class, and we had a smaller freshman class come in this year. So that brought our numbers down. Further, we also separated out our alternative school and our online school from the high school. Those two schools used to be counted together as our total number, right, of students. And now we have them separated. We said to OSAA that we've separated those two schools. Their response was, you didn't do it soon enough, so you're gonna have to wait a year before you can count that. Our suggestion was, well, if you know we're doing it already, why don't you go ahead and count it now? So we ended up testifying about that. They refused to take that information. They basically said no. The answer is no, we're not gonna take that information. So Cascade School District appealed that decision. And at the appeal, the judge who listened to the case basically said that OSAA's executive board needs to consider that information. Doesn't mean they have to take it, it just means they have to consider that information. And right now, we're waiting to hear what their executive board has decided.
Oh my god! I did it again.